We're told a slide J1 is of a stained transverse section through a leaf. We're told to draw a large plan diagram of a region of the leaf section present on the slide indicated by the diagram. So this region right here, we're told to use one ruled label line to identify the epidermis. So the issue here is I don't actually have access to the slide, so I've just put an image that is probably very inaccurate. However, it's important to know what sort of things the mark scheme looks out for in terms of drawings. So I've just gone ahead and drawn a drawing that covers the mark scheme points. So this is a 5 marker. Now let's take a look at what each mark is for. So our first mark is for sizing and shading. There should not be any shading whatsoever. Should be as simple as the diagram I have given or I have drawn. And in terms of size, you should aim to fill as much as the space provided as possible. Now, as long it doesn't have to fill the whole thing, but as long as it is not too small, you will get your first mark. The second mark is for the drawing overall. Not for the drawing overall. For the correct section of the leaf, they said that they want this region, and you should only be drawing that region. And then the third mark is for drawing at least 3 vascular bundles. So you can draw more. In the diagram I have provided, there are only 2, but on your slide or on the actual thing, it probably had a lot more vascular bundles. And to gain this mark, you also had to have not drawn any cells whatsoever. Like I said, your drawing should be as simple as the one that I have provided. The fourth mark is for drawing a circle around each vascular bundle to show that it is there. And then the fifth mark is for correctly labeling, obviously your epidermis. I've added a few more points. When you are labeling, you shouldn't be using arrows, should just be a straight line using a ruler, and you should try to avoid overlapping. And what I mean by this, or obviously you can't completely avoid this, so obviously it overlaps right here, but that's just one overlap. But just be clever with when you're labeling. You don't want to do something like this and then write epidermis, because now you've gone through so many structures, there's really no point. So try to be as simple as possible and draw a really short line that gets the job done. We're then told that the upper epidermis of the leaf on this slide has a thicker cuticle than the lower epidermis. We're told to observe this upper epidermis and the layer of cells beneath it, and then to draw a group of 4 adjacent cells, 2 of which being from the upper epidermis, 2 being of the cells in the layer beneath that epidermis. We're also told that each cell must at least touch 2 other cells, and to make a large drawing, use one ruled label line to identify the cell wall of one epidermal cell. Okay, again, this is a 5 marker, and again, your diagram is simple. Once again, it's zoomed in, but it's still simple. I didn't even include nucleus or a vacuole. It's likely that you wouldn't be able to see this. Even if you were to, you could add this, but really all we were asked was to label a cell wall. So unless they're really distinct, you don't really need to have added them, because even in the mark scheme, no structures besides the cell wall were even mentioned. But really, our first mark was for our size of our diagram. It has to be appropriately sized, as big as possible. Nothing tiny, like don't go and draw something like this. You're not going to get marks. 2, for that same mark, you needed to have drawn lines that are sharp and continuous, no gaps, and a sharpened pencil. 2, for our second mark, we needed to have drawn only 2 cells per layer, so 2 epidermal cells and 2 palisade mesophyll cells. And each cell has to touch at least 2 others. This cell, for example, touches this cell above it and this cell to its right. Same with this one, and then this cell touches the cell beneath, the cell beneath it, and the cell to its left, for example. And then for our fourth mark, we need to draw 2 lines around each cell. And we need to have 3 lines where the cells touch, okay? So each cell has 2 lines around it. So for example, this cell has 2 lines around it, this cell has 2 lines around it, this cell has 2 lines around it. And then 3 lines where they touch, so 1, 2, 3 in the middle. And then for our fourth mark, have to have the correct shape and arrangement. So the palisade mesophyll cells have to be beneath. The epidermal cells will be up top. The epidermal cells are more wide than they are tall, unlike the palisade mesophills, which are quite tall and a lot more narrower. So really, if you just kind of mimic the slide, you should get that mark as well. And then our fifth mark, again, like previously, is for a correct label, which is right here, of our epidermal cell wall. Don't be the person to label the cell wall of the layer, or of the cell in the layer beneath, for example. This is not what was asked of us. Then it says that this new figure 2.2 is a photomicrograph of a stained transverse section of a leaf once again, but from a different plant on the slide. We are told to identify 3 observable differences besides color and to record these differences. But obviously the differences being between this diagram, figure 2.2, and our section on J1. Like I said, I don't have access to this, but this is what the mark scheme had provided. You only needed to do 3 of these, but just to have an idea of the sorts of things you could talk about shape. So J1 was elongated. Even just looking at the diagram, as you can see, it was elongated, whereas in this figure, it's circular. So there's that. Then it says in terms of vascular bundles, figure in 2.2, the vascular bundles are in the center, and I've just sort of circled a few. In J1, apparently they were in a line, so I'm not quite sure whether they were like this, for example. I couldn't say, but that was the case for that. And then they compared stomata and air spaces. They said that figure 2.2 had barely any stomata and air spaces, as you can see, whereas apparently J1 had very many of each. And 3 marks, 1 mark for each row. Then we are told that the leaf in that figure grows in a dry habitat. We're told to explain one observable feature present in the diagram that allows for this plant to survive. It's a 1 marker. Really, you don't actually have to look at the diagram. You can honestly just make a guess with this one. The features of dry habitat plants are fixed, and really the explanation being the goal is to reduce transpiration, because obviously we want to reduce the loss of H2O, want to retain as much as possible. A couple of features you could have mentioned. You could have said the cuticle. You could have said the thick epidermis, which would increase the diffusion distance. You could say few stomata, so reduced surface area. And really, yeah, you could just infer based off of the question. You don't actually have to go back and look at the diagram, but that's fine as well, because it's not always as obvious. Then we are given the same photomicrograph, except this time we have a line through the diameter, and we are told that line XY represents the whole width of the leaf, while line XAB only represents the central region. We're told to measure the width and calculate the width of the central region as a percentage of the width of the whole region. Our central region, AB, as a percentage, so we're going to have to multiply by 100 of the width of our whole leaf section, which is our XY. Of implies we're dividing, and that's why we would need to times by 100 to end up with a percentage. I've made up the lengths. This is probably inaccurate, but basically length AB, I've said, is 4 millimeters. Length XY is 5 millimeters. And obviously, to calculate this right here, we're going to use the following formula, which was implied. and that is the length of AB divided by the length of XY times 100. So 4 divided by 5 times 100 gives us 80%. Really, it doesn't matter our units because we're dividing by them anyways, as long as the units are the same for each. It doesn't matter what units we use. However, this is a fourth marker. To gain the first mark, we needed to have a correct measurement of AB plus its unit. For the second mark, we needed a correct measurement of XY plus its unit. For the third mark, we needed to get this calculation right. And for the fourth mark, we needed to end up with the correct answer.